Okay. Character of just judgment. Judge fearfully, judge humbly, judge lovingly, judge truthfully. Last week we were talking through an object lesson of sorts to walk through this. We spent a good deal of time on that, thinking through the concept of judgment, continuing this week through passages of Scripture. When we are deciding whether or not to judge, is it okay to judge in this situation? How do I go about judging? Why maybe should I withhold judging? Am I being judged unrighteously? We look to this fourfold standard as a good beginning template. Judge fearfully with regard to sowing and reaping. With what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. Do I want the Lord to judge me in the same manner I am judging another? Do I want the Lord to mete out to me what I am meting out to another? If you do not want that, then you should step back, slow down, rethink. Judge humbly, without a hypocritical standard. That does not mean that you cannot be struggling with the same thing that you are telling someone else they're doing wrong. What it does mean is that you are not pretending. You're not pretending you're not struggling. You're not ignoring certain sins that are acceptable to you while highlighting sins that are unacceptable to you in the lives of others. You don't have pet sins that you just conveniently ignore in your own life. We don't have pet sins that we conveniently ignore in our church's life while simultaneously laying the hammer down on someone else for their choices. Judge lovingly. We do not judge in order to impose upon others our way of thinking, belittle others as it relates to their way of thinking, or shame others into doing what we want them to do. We would judge, we would discern, we would voice our concerns. We would do these things with intent to understand, to help, to build up, to edify. Do all things unto edification. And then finally, judge truthfully, with an understanding that God is the only true judge. Recognize truth as it exists. Recognize that you are not the arbiter of justice. You are not the arbiter of consequences. You're human. You are a servant like all others are servants. God is the true judge. So this is that list of ideas, concepts that we step into judgment with in order that we make sure that we are judging righteous judgments. And that's where we're going to kind of pick up this evening in John chapter 7. So I told you that we were going to start walking through the passages again. We've talked through a lot of things. We've gotten into a lot of weaker brethren principle stuff. Again, we'll get back into that with Romans 14 and we might get into 1 Corinthians 14 at that time. We'll have to see. Romans 14 is more of the emphasis. But in John chapter 7, verses 14 through 24, we read this. Now about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, How knoweth this man letters, having never learned? Jesus answered them and said, My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. So Jesus saying that his doctrine testifies of itself in conjunction with the Father. Everything he's saying is in line with the Father. If you know the Father, then you'll understand his doctrine. Verse 18, He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. So notice that verse. He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory. But he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. If I speak of my own ideas, I'm drawing attention to me. But if I'm seeking the glory of the Lord, then I am saying his ideas, not my ideas. And this is true. This is right. This is not unrighteousness. 19. Did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? Why go ye about to kill me? The people answered and said, Thou hast a devil, who goeth about to kill thee? Who's trying to kill you? They asked. Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and ye all marvel. Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers. And ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receive circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are ye angry at me, because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day? Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. So Jesus had healed a man on the Sabbath day. They questioned him. They were upset at him for this. He asks these questions. He says that his judgment is true. And then he says unto them, as it regards this, judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Now we have two things here. The first thing that we find as it relates to their judgment of Jesus on this day is that their judgment was unrighteous. We also find that their judgment was hypocritical. And so how is it that their judgment was unrighteous? If we go back to this idea in verse 18, they claim that what Jesus did on the Sabbath day was against the Sabbath, thus against the law, thus sin. But was it? It was not. Why might it not have been contrary to the Sabbath day? So, Kimberly? Okay, so Jesus would say, it's not in this passage, but Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, right? So he has the right to do what he would on the Sabbath day, as it were. So then would we say then, and Jesus uses that argument, so it's a right one and it's a good one. Outside of Jesus being Lord on the Sabbath, would it have been wrong? Lord of the Sabbath. Right.
But it's also that concept you had no key before about
So Jesus said, as it related, I think it's in one of the parallels, but Jesus said, is it right to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, right? And to do good, and Jesus said, if it's right to do good on the Sabbath, then why can I not heal this man on the Sabbath day? That's sort of an idea. Sarah, did you have something? Okay, she had to move on to children. But, so we have this idea. And Jesus says, did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? So there's the hypocritical. We'll get back to that in a moment. But the idea is it okay to do well on the Sabbath day? And then, of course, Jesus would ask, which of you, having an ox that falls into a pit, would not pull it out on the Sabbath day, right? To do good on the Sabbath day. Would you allow your animal to die? Would you offend that higher law in order to fulfill this lower law? Or would you say, the spirit of this lower law being as it is, I am going to live up to the higher law on this day, right? And so you live up to the higher law, which is to preserve life, knowing that if you were not having to live up to that higher law on that day, you would keep the lower law, the lesser law. And so in heart and in spirit, it is right. And that is the first idea here, that, and he even gives that, if a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are ye angry at me because I made a man every whit whole? If a man will be, if you will perform effectively a surgical procedure on a child on the Sabbath day, because that is the 8th day in accordance with the law, you say, well, there's only one 8th day in a child's entire life, in a person's entire life, and there's a Sabbath day every week, so we are going to hold to that singular 8th day as the higher law against the Sabbath. How much more can I make someone whole? You're cutting someone up, in essence. Can I not make someone whole on the Sabbath day as well? And that is where we get the unrighteous part, where no, this is not wrong. Now, if you had a choice of days and opportunities and times and whatever else it might be, the Sabbath day would not be the day. Perhaps. But the opportunity is there, the need is there, the activity is there, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's the unrighteousness standard. And then we see the hypocritical standard. And a part of that is, as he said, you will circumcise someone on the Sabbath. But then also this idea, did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? You had Moses who gave you the law, and yet you're not following it. You're not emphasizing, you're not highlighting, you are not recognizing, you don't even recognize the areas that you don't keep the law, and yet you're enforcing the law in these areas. Now, once again, the idea here is not, well, you aren't perfect, therefore you can't judge me. The idea is, you are judging me while simultaneously ignoring, as Jesus would say in another place, the weightier matters of the law. Right? He says in that passage that you strain at gnats but swallow camels. Right? You are ignoring the weightier matters of the law while you're nitpicking. You're tithing of your anise and your cumin, but you're ignoring the large things. And that's hypocritical. And what did he say there? The next thing he said is, you ought to do the little things, but not to have left the large things undone. So the essence of this is not, and this is very important, the essence of unhypocritical judgment is not stop seeking to the small things. It's make sure you have the big things in order. Then you can seek to the small things in righteousness, right? And that's perfectly fine. So that's the John 7 passage. And he says here, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. And this is the final bit here. Don't judge according to appearance. Judge a righteous judgment. What do you think Jesus means by that? And how does this passage fall into judging by appearance? Ben.
There are circumstances and information that affect whether a thing is right or wrong. And just by the singular appearance of the instance, that's not the whole story. The whole story matters.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole story matters. And we talked about this a lot with the cookie last week, right? There's a lot of things that go into observing and understanding what someone is doing. One of the things that I say when I'm doing marriage counseling is that assumptions are the death of relationships, right? Assumptions are the death of relationships. And I hammer that a lot because when we make assumptions and we look at something and then we make a snap judgment about it, and we assume a bunch of things, when I see someone do something and then I become offended or whatever it might be, generally speaking, there are layers and layers and layers of assumptions. At the very most basic is I understand the intention behind what they just did, right? So you're driving along and someone cuts in front of you and you're tempted to get very upset and to allow that to affect your day, to rob you of your peace and all of these things because you're making assumptions about why they just did that. And for every person who did that because they don't care and they're being reckless and they want to anger people or they're just being absolutely selfish, there might be that person who needs to get over in the lane, are panicking a little bit because they're about to miss their exit, and they do something and they're not trying to be awful to you. They just made a snap decision, and maybe it was a bad decision, maybe it was the wrong decision, maybe it wasn't, whatever it might be. We've all had to play the bad driver before because of a place that we put ourselves in. Now, once again, in that situation, we would all like to hope that when we have to cut someone off in order to get into the lane that we need to get into to do what we need to do, that the person who we cut off might understand that it's a unique circumstance, that I'm not always like this, that I'm not a terrible person, and all of those things. We'd like to think that they would think that of us, but do we extend said courtesy to another? Or do we judge according to appearance? Are we judging according to appearance, or are we judging righteous judgment? It might be that we see someone making a decision, and I have run through in my life all of the reasons why I don't make that decision, why I reject that in my life. Well, I reject doing that, seeing that, whatever it might be. And I run through all of those things in my life, and then when I see someone else do it, the thing that goes through my mind is, how could they possibly do that, knowing all of these things? You know all those things. You've thought through it. You've considered it. You've sought counsel. You've prayed. You've done all those things. Have they? You understand the Bible a certain way. You come at it from a certain perspective. You have a history with that idea. You have things in your life that have informed your decision. Do they? You're terrified of that thing, or you refuse to go there because of certain circumstances, because of certain temptations, because of certain weaknesses. Do they have those weaknesses too? Can everyone not eat cookies because I can't handle eating cookies without going overboard? Or might somebody else have enough temperance to handle eating a cookie without going overboard? But if I look at them and say, how could they possibly eat a cookie? Don't they know? Don't they know that once you eat one, you can't stop? No. Once I eat one, I can't stop. That doesn't mean that once they eat one, they can't stop. Now, you can go up to them and say, hey, just want to let you know that a whole lot of cookies can be really bad for you. And I have a problem with that. And maybe you want to be careful. But to go up to them and say, why'd you do that? You do realize, don't you, that once you eat a cookie, you can't stop? Don't judge according to appearances, judge righteous judgments, right? And so we need to be careful with the assumptions we make. Because humans are really, really good at and hasty to make assumptions and to backfill what we're observing through all of our experiences, our knowledge, our study, our everything. And then to impose all of that time, on all of that effort, all of that learning on someone else who may not very well be there. And then that doesn't necessarily mean that the thing they're doing is okay just because they don't have all of that knowledge. But we do need to be awful careful about how we view them, consider what they're doing. Are they rebellious or ignorant? All of those things, that's a part of the process, right? And as I go through the process of judging fearfully and judging humbly and judging lovingly and judging truthfully, and I refuse to make those assumptions, and I assume nothing of that sort, I judge righteous judgments, well then I can see clearly to help get the mote out of my brother's eye. Have you ever thought before about brother or sister in Christ? May I present before you a thought process as it relates to? Could we do a Bible study considering? May I at least share with you my experiences regarding? And then we lay those things before them, and at the end of laying all that before them, they are going to come to a decision. And maybe it is that they will be proud and they will be selfish and they will say, I don't want to listen to you. Or maybe they'll say, you know what? Thank you. I've considered those things and I still think I'm doing okay. Or maybe they'll say, wow, I've never thought of that before. You're right. I need to fundamentally reevaluate my thought process on this. And wherever they end up in that spectrum, we judge truthfully and we say, now they will stand before the true judge. I have done my part. And then if it affects me or my church in a particularly unique way and it's a legitimate problem, then there might have to be extra steps taken to protect others or whatever it might be. All of that in order to understand, to help, and to edify. That's the process, right? Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgments. Can we judge? We absolutely can, but we need to make sure that they're righteous judgments. Thoughts on this? Sam?
We're going through the list. I think this one really highlights where, they weren't judging in love at all. Where it was holding up a Sabbath rule and utterly disregarding what would be loving in that situation, what God's heart is as far
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I say this, I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it this way, and this is the wrong way to say it, but I'm going to say it wrong. Can you imagine a group of people ignoring the fact that a man was made whole in order to nitpick a guy about that law of Moses? How insensitive, unloving, ridiculous do you have to be? How callous to the reality of that man's plight? And you say, well, Pastor, why would you say that that's the wrong way to say it? Well, that's the reason why that's the wrong way to say it is because that's judgmental. Because we do this, don't we? Now, it's not that we necessarily, I mean, we're not doing it with people who are healed on the Sabbath, because that's not happening anymore in this sort of a way. But I remember one of my friends who's no longer a part of our circles, one of the things that caused that to happen was that after our year, this is a seminary friend, and he went back to his church, and I went back to mine, and he was watching a missionary presentation, and this person was presenting about the Lord's work in this area and the people that were getting saved and the work that was being done. And within the video, there was a portion where they were in Africa and there were tribal drums. And because they were in Africa. And after the service, my friend said he went to the pastor to ask him some questions, and there was a line going out of the pastor's office telling them to drop that missionary because there were tribal drums in this video. And he thought, here's a missionary who, by all accounts, is doing great work. And this many people in our church want to drop him because of tribal drums that they heard in the video. No context, no understanding of what was going on there, just tribal drums in the video. And that's the same sort of spirit, is it not? A complete lack of understanding of context, and in essence, a lack of love. Now, that's not to say we pragmatically say, and justifies the means as long as good things are happening, ignore the method. But what Jesus is saying here, and this is what he said in verse 18 about him that speaking of himself seeks his own glory, is this: if everything that has come out of this circumstance has been the fruit of righteousness, then why are you so convinced that the method is unrighteous? Why are you so convinced that the method is unrighteous if everything that came out of it was the fruit of righteousness? And again, we need to be careful with that line of reasoning, because if you think back to the Billy Graham Crusades, and one of the concerns with the Billy Graham Crusades among our circles was that it was a very pragmatic enterprise. They would have a vast array of music. It was very, very ecumenical. And then Billy Graham would get up at some point within the course of this very long deal and give the gospel. And the question is, look, if people are getting saved, why does the rest of it matter? Mustn't it mean that good things are happening? And it's only now, looking back, that we realize that, yes, people got saved, but they were also then scattered. And there were people at the time that were concerned about this too. Those people were then scattered into many churches full of error because there was no discretion about where they were sent after they were saved. And it brought a great deal of leaven into the lump. And so, again, this is not the idea of pragmatism, but we do need to be careful, don't we? That we are allowing that we are allowing things to bear out their own fruit, and that we need to be careful that we're not denying the good because of the presence of things that concern us. We need not deny the fact that churches that we would consider to be deeply compromised are still winning folks to Christ. Because they are. And I don't like that. I want to think that we're the only ones that can do that kind of stuff. But we certainly aren't. And there are churches that are deeply compromised that are doing a great work in that area. Now, are there consequences to that compromise? Absolutely. But love compels us to say, and truth compels us to say, yes, something's happening there still. Andrew?
I'm just thinking of Priscilla and Aquila and Apollos, where they didn't say, you can't preach anymore because you got it wrong.
Right.
They helped him, and he brought people. He wasn't too proud to say, oh, I'm not preaching. He just wasn't popular.
Yeah.
That is a similar context to what you're talking about.
Yep. Aquila and Priscilla is a great example with Paul of that. Yep. Anything else? Okay, let's talk about John 8, next chapter. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And when Jesus had lifted up himself, and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where art those thine accusers? Where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. And that's the word judge, by the way. Go and sin no more. No man has judged thee, I do not judge thee, go and sin no more. Okay, let me see. It's kata krino in this context, not just krino. This is that great uncomfortable passage. What do we do with this? Any thoughts on what we do with this passage? Andrew.
Is it the same word when Jesus said, I didn't come to heal, I came to save? I can't remember exactly which verse. I think there's two similar verses.
Let's see. Let's see if those are... That's just krino. As opposed to kata krino. Which recall, let's go ahead and, let's come out here. And kata krino is to pass sentence, as opposed to just discerning or deciding. It is to pass sentence upon, right? So, and this is an important aspect of this. So this is the idea not just of assessing right or wrong, but of levying a sentence upon. Not the same as came not to condemn the world, that being just krino in that context. Yes, Andrew.
In John 3:17, that's another one. That's it. That said, the Lord condemned the world. I know I could hear it in my mind. That is the verse I was thinking of first.
And that's just krino as well. Mm-hmm. And condemned in the next verse is also krino. And then this is the condemnation is the noun form of that same word, krisis, krino being the verb, krisis being the noun form. Sarah?
The thing that comes to mind with this passage is the grief part that comes when one child is coming to report on another child who's doing wrong. And you see in the reporter's heart
Mhm.
And, I mean, it grieves God so much more. That our hearts would be so hard that not only we would find pleasure in someone else's failure and pleasure in the thought of their punishment. It's not the same as being glad that God does punish sinners. It's being glad at your enemy's demise.
Yeah.
And that heart is so ugly. And it shows so much more to work on than the other person who might be quick to repent. Who knows? Like in this one, Christ talks to the woman and she says there's no accusers, and he tells her, go and sin no more. And maybe her heart was repentant, but we knew the Pharisees' heart was not. They were seeking any way to destroy Jesus, even in spite of all the good that he had done, because he rubbed them wrong. It wasn't what they were expecting. He didn't fit in what they had set up.
Yep, very, very good thoughts. The essence of this idea, which you can find in children when you have children, is that a child comes up to you with effective glee to see their sibling punished, right? And there is a tremendous lessening of compulsion to levy the fullest extent of the consequence upon the offender, because you're so disgusted by the one who came to watch the offender be punished, right? Or to see it come to pass. And this brings us back to what we talked about that I believe the second week. Proverbs 24:17 and 18. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. And this is that idea, which is realized also in the human heart as it is in the heart of God. This idea that when a man is judged unrighteously, it appears as though to some degree God regards that unrighteous judgment as a measure of vengeance of a sort. You know, when the Bible says, avenge not yourselves, but give way, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. And what we find there, as it relates to the scriptures, is that if we take vengeance, then the Lord will not. And a part of that vengeance can, in fact, simply be the rejoicing in our enemy's demise and downfall, and the gladness at his stumbling. What we find here with this woman taken in adultery is that not that Jesus is unwilling to acknowledge the sin of adultery. Of course, we don't know exactly what's going on here, right? We don't know if they were telling the truth. We don't know anything about the circumstances of the woman taken in adultery. We don't know what they considered adultery. What was it that she did that they considered adultery, right? We all know that humans are very have a great capacity to play very fast and loose with definitions when we find that it will be a benefit to us. So one of my children will come up and say, so-and-so punched me. And then you start to dig, and that punch was actually, as they were walking by, they stumbled and tapped their sibling's arm as they walked by, and, oh, so-and-so punched me. Well, their definition of punch changed. Whereas when someone says, so-and-so punched me, and they actually did get punched, and you go up to the other one and say, did you punch your sibling? Well, I touched them, right? Because our definitions have a way of changing based upon our perceptions and such. And so we don't exactly know what taken in adultery means here. Of course, we certainly don't know the great mystery of what Jesus wrote when he was kneeling down and writing in the dirt. But what we do know is this. Of course, Jesus is righteous. But what we do know is that Jesus was far more concerned with the manner of their judgment than he was with the other things happening in that moment. Yes, it's an opportunity for him to extend grace. Yes, it's an opportunity to teach a lesson. But this idea, in verse 7, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. As we've talked about judgment, we know that this does not mean that if you have no sin in your life, or that you must have no sin in your life in order to speak to the sin in others' lives. We know that it doesn't mean that. It cannot mean that biblically. We know that it cannot mean that you cannot be struggling even with the thing that you're pointing out in another. We know that. But what we see that it does mean is that we're not judging hypocritically, that we are not levying upon others accusations when we ourselves are not acknowledging the problems in our own heart, either in that same area or in other areas. And then also, as Sarah said, and Sam, this goes back to your loving point. They were not here to seek restitution, to bring. So what? Let me ask you this. In the Old Testament law, we see consequences, right? Levied against certain actions. What was the intent? What was the purpose of those consequences? What was the divine Mosaic law purpose of those consequences for said offenses? Why did God want offenses to have meted out consequences?
That evil would be put away in the land.
Okay, so it was evil to be put away in the land, right? And there's two concepts there. The first is natural deterrence against evil. That's the carnal concept. And then there's the idea that there is divine restitution, right? That there is a sense of justice being done. Which means when we mete out consequences, the intent of said consequences is not supposed to be, I'm offended, so I'm going to punish you. The intent is, there is a wrong that needs to be righted. They did not come to Jesus to see a divine wrong righted, to justify God's character, to fight for God's character, to fight for God's holiness, to seek to alleviate the grief that might be in the Lord's heart for such a folly done in Israel against the Lord. The fact of the matter is, if we take this scenario and we extend it to its natural idea, there was never a moment where the Lord even came into their mind in the process of this judgment, right? What came into their mind was entrap Jesus. This woman's going to get what she deserves, embarrass her, shame her. And entrap Jesus was the big one, right? And entrap Jesus. There is nothing in that brings justice, reconciliation, what's the word I'm looking for? Restitution. All of those things that consequences are supposed to bear out in the lives of through offenses. None of it would actually take place because the hearts of the people were so far from the Lord. The consequence would, in a manner of speaking, almost be as great of an offense as the offense itself, because it was done with such a hypocritical and malicious heart. And so in one sense, it would be heaping sin on top of sin to levy said consequences upon her, giving into this malice in the hearts of these people and allowing that malice to be the thing that compels this judgment. And that's unrighteousness. Jesus could not play into such unrighteousness, for indeed Jesus was righteous. So you settle that unrighteousness first, and then you can deal with her. And they walk away. And where are your accusers? Does no man condemn thee? No man, Lord. Well, then I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more. Of course, we don't know, again, what the circumstance was there. But either way, go and sin no more. And of course, Jesus is extending grace here, as we see. And making a point. Other thoughts on this? Sam?
Well, I think this also kind of brings an interesting topic as well, the idea of how are we to handle when someone brings an offense that they have against another person, kind of that third level of separation away from an offense, and where, in this case, it was being brought for all the wrong reasons.
Yep.
And that can happen.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, absolutely it is. Right? And that is layer number one in any judgment situation. We need to judge the judgment. Because if we don't judge the judgment, then we can't have any confidence that there's righteous judging happening. And if there's not righteous judging happening, then it's going to be worse for us than otherwise. So we always have to judge the judgment first, right? And where there is unrighteous judgment, that must be sorted out first, because if there's unrighteous judgment, then you're never going to come to a righteous conclusion. And oftentimes when there's unrighteous judgment, what we find is alienation of the judged, right? Where they say, well, then I'm out of here. I'm done with this. I'm not interested in this. And in a manner, rightfully so. But the unfortunate thing is, maybe there is some reason why they need a righteous judgment. They need to hear some things, but they're shut down by an unrighteous judgment because of the manner in which we go about it, because of the unrighteousness that approaches it. And we're never going to get the results that God wants, the spiritual results that God wants. Kimberly, did you have something?
Yeah, back to your previous point, it's always bothered me that they say that she was caught in the act, in the very act.
Yeah.
Well, where's the paramour?
Yeah, there is an interesting idea there. If she's caught in the very act of adultery, and again, the question is, what does that mean, right? What did they consider adultery in this context? We know what they would consider adultery for them, because Jesus talks about that in Matthew 5, that if you lust after a woman in your heart, you've committed adultery already, and none of them would call that adultery. But simultaneously, what is it? And then if she is caught in the very act, then where's the man? And that is a very good question that, once again, and we don't need that question answered directly. Whether we want to say that the man receives a different judgment, that would be very common, right? In that culture, for a man to, it was significantly more it has been historically significantly more allowable for men to commit adultery than women in just about every culture that's ever existed. So we could consider that, but once again, that boils down to that next lowest problem, which is there's nothing righteous happening here. There's nothing righteous happening here. And instead of dealing with the unrighteousness, whatever that may or may not have been with the woman, Jesus is going to use this to drive to the heart of the unrighteous manner in which this is happening. And sometimes, like Sarah had mentioned with children, sometimes that's actually the way that goes. Is I will, when I hear such accusations and such malice, I will forego my concern about the accused, maybe just for a time, maybe altogether, because the heart of the accuser needs to be the one that's actually considered here. And that's not necessarily an unfounded idea in a parental context, nor would it necessarily need to be unfounded in a God context, especially when we consider that Proverbs 27 idea, that the Lord may be so displeased with our reaction to someone's folly that he turns away his wrath. And God has every right to do that, doesn't he? And by the way, as much as Proverbs 27 is somewhat warning, don't do this because the Lord might turn away his wrath, and I want the Lord's wrath to fall on them. God forbid that we should ever want anyone to get what they deserve. In that sense, that, boy, I'm really glad that I'm not going to get what I deserve. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't rejoice in the fact that one day wicked people are going to have their day. But far better if that wicked person, even if it's in their dying breath, used it to say, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And we got to see them in heaven. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun right now when I think of the evil people in this world. But that should be what we want, right? What else on this? Same.
I think it's also interesting in this case where it kind of even deeper than just tattling on another, but also the desire to almost make yourself look better.
Yeah.
Like based on a contrast, to find all the things that other people have wrong, kind of climbing on them to hold yourself up higher as holier and more righteous in this type of situation.
Yeah. Climbing on top of others' sin, or failures, or struggles in order to elevate yourself, or in this case, literally using this woman as a prop to entrap someone. Completely disregarding what's going on in her heart, her needs, her trials, her fears, whatever it might be. And though we might presume at this point, it would seem as though, based upon the way that they treated Jesus and the fact that they had to go to Pilate to have him killed, it would seem as though women weren't just dragged out in the street and stoned anymore. Possibly, maybe they were. You know, I'm inferring a little bit there, but if they had to go to Pilate to get Jesus killed, they couldn't just do it themselves. Probably that was pretty standard procedure. And if that's standard procedure, then they're literally allowing this woman's life to be the red meat to try to bring about the entrapment of another, which is just, I mean, the amount of malice, disregard, uncaring wickedness of what they're about to do from the spiritual leaders in Israel, right, is just deep. It's a terrible, terrible thing that they're doing here. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And that's what Jesus is highlighting, right? They're attempting to elevate themselves. They're attempting to entrap Jesus. And then there's this woman, this living soul, who is just the punching bag for them to accomplish their ends. And God forbid, right? No matter how much we might disrespect choices, whatever, of whoever it might be, you know, we look at things that are happening today with disgust and with horror, with revulsion. But those people are still not there for us to elevate ourselves, mock, belittle, shame. This is not for us to do. And these who are made in the image of God, who need Christ, many of whom are doing what they are doing in ignorance, their hearts being darkened, are not there for our comparisons, elevation at their expense, mocking, belittling, or like Sarah.
And it's like you touched on this also, anytime judgment needs to be used, the goal is reconciliation, is that person's reconciliation, specifically to God.
Yep.
But we're not seeking their punishment, we're seeking their repentance.
Right.
But that's what we should be, and there's nothing about what the Pharisees did in that case to bring that woman into repentance. Everything they did would have hardened or inflamed her.
Yep.
Like just that heart, and if we had the heart of seeking reconciliation and repentance, we would judge the way that he, has been laid out, the gently, fearfully, in consideration of your own soul, things like that. Those things would be covered, kind of like with the, if you love God and love your neighbor as yourself, you're going to obey the commandments.
Right.
Because all those are included in loving God and loving your neighbor. If we were seeking other people's good, how much better the judgment? Yes, consequences still happen.
Right.
But how much better? The goodness of the Lord leads us into repentance. Yes, we still need spankings, but the goodness leads us to repentance, and repentance and reconciliation is the goal.
Yep, and that's exactly it. So that's the judge lovingly, right? We seek to understand and to help, to edify and unto reconciliation. We do not judge to belittle or to shame, to degrade, or to, there was one more I had there, but belittle. Yeah, but that's not why we judge. And if we are, it's unrighteous judgment. Doesn't mean that what they're doing is good. It doesn't mean that we're not necessarily correct in the substance of what we're saying. But we are absolutely incorrect to levy that judgment for those reasons. And thus, with what judgment we judge, we will be judged. With what measure we meet, we will have it meted to us. And that should strike deep fear into all of our hearts. Anything else on this? Okay, we'll stop there for this week. We'll pick up there next week.